Guys, it's the start of May and I'm so freaking happy because we get to start on this book for the Flow State Book Club, which is a new video series I'm doing. If you're not a part of the Telegram group, join the Telegram group. The link is in the description. Today we're going to be talking all about this book and we're going to get started with the introduction today. Welcome.
Yeah. I'm inspired. I'm inspired.
Hey there guys, how's it going? My name is Sumit Chatterjee from the Flow Zone Academy and I'm a flow state coach, which means that I help you feel better and perform better. Today we're talking all about The Art of the Impossible by Steven Kotler, a peak performance primer. Man, this book is going to absolutely and phenomenally change your life into a different orbit, okay? And the reason why is very, very significant. This book not only looks at the small I impossible, getting out of your situation of poverty or overcoming some grave trauma, or even starting a business and being successful at it. So I am going to just go through some of the most interesting portions that I've read and the key takeaways from what I've read. Let's get it. We all go on these hero's journeys or these quests, but we can't really maintain our peak performance. I think once we understand this checklist, we can then start to envision what is truly possible for ourselves. So there's small I impossible, which is in your own mind, and there's big I impossible, which is like actually breaking a world record or something that's never been done before, okay? And what Steven Kotler says is the more small I impossibles that you create, the more likelihood or possibility or chance there is for a big I impossible to then take place, okay? So this is the art form. We're going into really learning about our intrinsic capabilities, our internal resources, right? So we can be resourceful human beings on this planet. Thank you so much for being a part of this challenge and this journey. We're gonna be reading this book throughout the whole month. So, read it at your own pace. I'm just gonna be going through it. And if you haven't gotten the book yet, now is your chance to get it because we're right on the introduction phase. So if you're watching right now, make sure you get yourself a copy so you can follow along, okay? We're gonna take our peak performance to the next level at the end of this month. And by June, we're going to basically have a new mindset in terms of how we look at peak performance and how we can have this holy trinity to help us. You know what's so strange? I look at myself and then I look back on videos that I did where I created this meme of myself, kind of, but you could say of peak performance in general. And I called him the 100% Flomer, okay? And I just want to show you guys this and now look at me and tell me that this isn't some version of the meme that I've created for myself, you see? I just thought that was cool. But anyway, let's get started. In a very real sense, it's a practical playbook for impractical people. Sounds like me? Does it sound like you? Okay, good. It's a kind of extreme innovation. Okay? Important to note that. Extreme innovation. Those who tackle the impossible are not just innovating in matter, but also in mind. As we know, all is mind, right? So we think of the word impossible as it's never been done, but I say never, okay? Basically what we're trying to do here is we're getting more of an understanding of, okay, yeah, I need to think bigger. Like I need to think in terms of a moonshot or like a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like that is the level that we want to expand our consciousness and think about the impossible. So you understand, man, this guy has no clue how to proceed. He's figuring out this map. I didn't know any writers. I didn't know anyone who wanted to be a writer. There was no discernible path from A to B. No internet, few books, no one to ask. So Steven basically explains that he wanted to be a writer, but there's nothing around him showing him that there was a possibility in being a writer, right? There's no writers around him. There's nothing like that. So what he did was he followed around adventure sports athletes to gain that momentum to begin his writing process in a sense. And that's very interesting because he just kind of went with that impulse, right? That sense of like, oh, there's expansion here, there's potential here, there's opportunity here, and using that mindset to kind of move him forward into things that he wouldn't naturally do. And he got into so many injuries and there's that physical risk. but the emotional rewards from, doing these certain things and each week seeing himself improve after, he takes 3 months off for an injury, he comes back and he ends up seeing himself so much better. And so that's what we want to aim for. So it was impossible in his own mind. He couldn't actually see himself doing the things that he wanted to do. Okay, let's start to understand this a little bit. You're here not to do any shortcuts. You can try to get a summary of this book, but it's not going to help you. We're following through along and helping you to grow. That you are here to have a long-term peak performance result, not just a short burst of it for a month and then you go back to your old ways, okay? This is really giving you the tenets, the principles, the values that you need to adopt internally so that you can keep moving forward. Let's keep going. Yet there's no secret. After decades spent researching the subject and training people to overcome these odds, I've repeatedly learned the same lesson. If you devote your life to accomplishing lowercase I impossibles, you can sometimes end up accomplishing a capital I impossible along the way. This is so powerful, man. This is kind of how he explains microflow and macroflow too, right? Like the more microflow experiences you have, the more macroflow or peak experiences you'll have. So this is what he means. If you can get it and create it and start believing in yourself and your own mind to get resourceful, and it's not just resources. You see, we live in a culture that's evolutionarily preparing us for scarcity, to fight for our resources. You can either fight for your resources, as Stephen says, or you can be resourceful, which means you can be collaborative, you can be creative, you can be innovative, you can think on your feet, you can improvise, you can be able to get yourself out of certain situations through your innovation, through your problem solving. Only thing more difficult than the emotional toil of pursuing true excellence is the emotional toil of not pursuing true excellence. Okay? Very different paradigm. You're soaking in this mentality, right? If you could write or surf, or write and ski, or write and rock climb, there was work. We're actually learning from Stephen's sacrifices. I think that's important to recognize, right? Like his whole life is a journey of him following around these athletes for like 10 years, right? And then also being able to put that into writing is another skill set. 2 broken collarbones, yeah, okay, Steven, we get it, okay? 3 torn rotator cuffs, okay, you're just flexing, bro, okay? 4 broken ribs, both of my arms, my wrist into 6 pieces. I want this to go out to anybody who's been in a state where they had time off, or maybe they sustained some injuries and they're just in their own internal world. And now they have access to internal resources, not just the external, medallions or trophies or, extraneous shit that you see around you, but like the internal resources is what we're talking about, right? Many people thought that the laws of physics prohibited surfers from paddling into waves larger than 25 feet. Yet today, just 2.5 decades later, surfers routinely paddle into waves that are 60 feet tall and tow into waves that are over 100 feet tall. I believe there's also a story about a man who, broke the world record for running or something, and then only 48 hours later or something, it was broken, where it was never thought possible. So, that big I impossible led to that small I impossible coming later with that other guy. But I guess they're both big I impossibles because they broke records in a sense, right? Almost all of the people I knew came from extremely difficult backgrounds. A great many came from broken homes. They had rough childhoods. They had little education. They had almost no money. Yet here they were on a stunningly regular basis, stampeding their way through the impossible, and in the process redefining the limits of our species. Then it goes on to talking about, his little brother wasn't magic, and this is what kind of sparked his enthusiasm, right? So little brother wasn't magic. This is what we're diving into. We're understanding that impossible has a formula. The major lesson of those years was that no matter how mind-bendingly improbable a trick looked on the front end, there was always an understandable logic on the back end. Okay? Very little is impossible with 10 years practice. This is a game of patience, right? This is a long-term game. We gotta thrive here, okay? Whenever the impossible becomes possible, there's always a formula. That's what he's essentially saying, guys. There's always a process underneath that. I'm using the term formulas in the same way that scientists talk about algorithms, okay? as a sequence of steps that anyone can follow to get consistent results. In the collective, we have a saying, personality doesn't scale, biology scales. Personality is extremely individual. For all these reasons, what works for me is almost guaranteed not to work for you. It is the very thing designed by evolution to work for everyone. Then we unearth mechanism. And what's the biological formula for the impossible? Well, the answer is flow. It is a state created by evolution to enable peak performance. Whenever the impossible becomes possible, flow always plays a starring role. Why would evolution create a state of consciousness that amplifies all of these particular skills? Evolution shaped the brain to enable survival, but evolution itself is driven forward by the availability of resources. Here we go. Scarcity of resources is always the largest threat to our survival, making it the largest driver of evolution. And there are only two possible responses to this threat. You can fight over dwindling resources, or you can go exploring, get creative, innovative, and cooperative, and make new resources. Flow is to extreme innovation what oxygen is to breathing. Simply the biology of how it gets done. It's the vehicle. Okay, flow state is the vehicle. To describe the main ways we live and play here on Earth. A finite game is just that, finite. It has a finite number of options and players, clearly defined winners and losers, an established set of rules. This is chess or checkers, but it's also politics, sports, and war. Infinite games are the opposite. They have no clear winners or losers, no established time frame for play, and no fixed rules. The number of participants keeps changing, and the only goal is to keep on playing. Art and science and love are infinite games. Most important, so is peak performance. So peak performance isn't something we win. Field of play is big as small as you choose to live your life. Instead, peak performance is an infinite game, but not quite. Peak performance is an unusual kind of infinite game. It may be unwinnable, but you can definitely lose. The brilliant Harvard psychologist William James explained it like this: the human individual lives usually far within his limits. He possesses powers of various sorts, which he habitually fails to use. He energizes below his maximum and he behaves below his optimum. James's point is that the reason we're not living up to our potential is that we're not in the habit of living up to our potential. We've automized the wrong processes. We're playing the wrong game. Lose by not trying to play full out. Not being the 100% flomer, okay? Not trying to do the impossible, whatever that is for you. We're all capable of so much more than we know. This is the main lesson in a lifetime in peak performance has taught me. Far beyond our comfort zone, that's where we find out who we are and what we can be. In other words, the only way to discover if you're capable of pulling off the impossible, whatever that is for you, is by attempting to pull off the impossible. Motivation is what gets you into the game. Learning is what helps you continue to play. Creativity is how you steer. And flow is how you turbo boost the results beyond all rational standards and reasonable expectations. That, my friends, is the real art of impossible. Welcome to the infinite game, okay? Thank you for choosing to watch this video today. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, the like button, comment. You know, if you have any questions about the book, if you want to ask me more questions, join the Telegram group. Shoot me a message on Instagram. Let's get started. Have an incredible day. May the flow be with you and stay legendary. Let's get it today. Upward Spiral Gang.